Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to recreate this Red Riding Hood image using Adobe Firefly and Photoshop. Firefly is Adobe's new AI image generator, and it's currently in beta. At the beginning of the tutorial, I do show you how to request access. However, to get the most out of this tutorial, you should already have access to it. You could also use one of the other AI image generators, such as Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, for the first steps. However, this tutorial is specifically on Adobe Firefly. I do introduce the user interface, how to use it, what are some tips and tricks to get the best results out of it, and then how you can take that result and with Photoshop clean it up, kind of show you the workflow of AI image generator through Photoshop to a final image. So if you do want to follow along, I have included a link in the description with all the images that I use, including the image generator outputs. So if you want to skip all the AI part and just do the Photoshop part, you can do that as well. Go ahead, download all that, and then let's dive into Firefly. Okay, so to access Adobe Firefly, you're going to go to firefly.adobe.com. Now, when you go there, you're going to see a screen like this. And here you can, if you scroll down, you can see the three AI modules that are currently in beta being tested. And then if we go down here, scroll down, you can see other ones that are in exploration, meaning these are ones that Adobe is working on now. They don't exist yet, but in the future, they plan on adding these both to the beta and then in the future into the Adobe suite of programs. So to request access, what you're going to do is click on this button right up here, request access, and then you're going to put in your information, answer these questions, and then go ahead and apply to become part of the beta. I applied about 4 weeks ago and I was let in last week. So if I sign in here, I'm going to have access, and let's go ahead and sign in. Okay. Okay, so we're now logged in, and now I have access to these. I can click here to generate, and the one I want to cover today is text to image. Text to image allows you to generate image from a text description. So in order to start, what we're going to do is either click on the generate or just click anywhere in this window. And here it's going to give you some instructions about the beta, what you can expect. Basically, it's welcome message, what data it's using, what kind of feedback it wants from you as a beta tester, some user guidelines to follow, and then some limitations. Now, it's important to read these limitations. Let's quickly go over them. So Firefly does not support upload or export of video content. Firefly cannot edit or iterate on your own artwork at this time. So this is really important to know and is one of the big limitations with AI as it exists today, whether it's Midjourney, Firefly, or DALL-E, or any of the other AI generative programs, is that they don't iterate or edit your own artwork. The reason for that is Firefly has been developed using content available for commercial use, including content from Adobe stock. Now, there's a whole argument about the ethics of AI and, it's sampling artwork from people who haven't consented to have their artwork sampled. But in the grand scheme of things, it's really no different than us humans looking at and being inspired by other artworks. At the end of the day, the AI generative models are going to get smart enough and have enough inputs to be able to pretty much recreate any artwork. So Adobe is taking some measures to make sure that they aren't there aren't going to be copyright issues with AI in terms of creating an image that's too similar to others. Now, how they do that, I have no idea, but it's something that you do need to consider when you're working with AI, is understand that there are ethical implications. And then right now, Firefly is not for commercial use. It's only for non-commercial use while it is in beta. Now, what that means is you cannot use the artwork for advertising or doing something where you're selling or creating packaging or what have you. You obviously can post the images to social media or use them for training purposes. Okay, so having done all that, we're now going to be, and what we just went through, that little welcome screen, that's not going to appear the next time you log in. It'll only appear the first time. Okay, so down here we have our input field. This is where we're going to put in our prompt to start the generative AI model working on creating an image. Now, the other way you can do this is you can also scroll through these sample images and use these as a starting point. That's actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to scroll through these until I find an image I kind of like as a starting point. And for this, we're going to do a little bit of exploration on kind of a landscape image. So I'm going to scroll through here. I kind of like this one. I like this one. Now, all these we can just try the prompt, but let's scroll through and see if we can find one that's a little bit more. So something like this, but maybe with something a little more fantastical. I kind of like those. And I really like this one, maybe this one. And you'll see when you scroll over these, the prompt that was used. So stream of consciousness in a vast landscape. You can kind of see where AI does well and where it doesn't. It is rather hit or miss, I've found, in terms of understanding your instructions. So you have to work with it for quite a while and try different prompts to basically get the result that you're looking for. Now, as I'm scrolling up here, we're starting to see repeat images, which means we're probably getting kind of close to the end of the images that are currently in the gallery. I'm going to go ahead and choose this one, which is a modern house sitting on an island and a pond surrounded by mountains, and then comma concept art. So let's go ahead and try prompt. You'll notice that the concept art at the end was moved down here to a tag. So this is the basic interface for Adobe Firefly. Down here is where you're going to create your prompt. And then here, they're always going to show 4 options for that prompt. So this gives you kind of a way to iterate on the prompt. For example, if I really like this one, you rate the result. You can also download here, and then here you can submit to the Firefly gallery, use as a reference image, which we'll cover a bit later, or copy to the clipboard. That's if you want to paste it somewhere else. So if I were working in Photoshop, I could go here, copy to the clipboard, and then go into Facebook, and then in Facebook I could go ahead and paste it, right? So, and when you paste it, you'll notice that this has been added automatically. That is basically the little signal that this is from the beta. It was created by Adobe Firefly, and it's not for commercial use. If you want to stay within the Firefly beta, I would suggest not erasing that or removing it from any artwork that has been created by Adobe Firefly until it's out of beta. Okay, so that's what those commands are. On the left here, you have similar results. What this does is if you click it, it'll regenerate the other 3 using this as kind of a reference. So the other 3 will be a little bit closer to that in terms of the artwork. And then down here you have the rating, so whether you like or dislike the result. And then here, if you want to report it to the beta team in terms of maybe it didn't match your prompt or it did something that was offensive, whatever it is, that's where you're going to report it. Okay, so those are your basic options here. Now let's look at the right side here where we have a few more options. So the first one is the aspect ratio. Here you can change whether you want it landscape, portrait, square, and widescreen. Now these are pretty common formats across social media outlets, which is probably why these were chosen. The landscape and the portrait correspond with the landscape and portrait image sizes that you find on Facebook and Instagram. And then obviously square is a very common Instagram format. And then finally widescreen 16:9. That's the standard movie size or format for widescreen. And it's what a lot of monitors are set to. So when I create artwork, that's usually what I'm going to be using. So let's go ahead and switch it to 16:9. And let's see what kind of results we get. Now, I have noticed that rather than just expanding the same image, it'll actually regenerate all of them when you change the aspect ratio. So that's something to consider. If you really like one of the outputs, don't change your aspect ratio before saving it because you'll lose that output. All right, next we have content type. And for all the ones here, content type, styles, color, and tone, when you add these, what it's going to do is it's going to add a tag here, and that tag will influence how the AI generates your model. So on some images, I found that changing these has a very drastic result, while on others, the result is rather subtle. And in some cases, you actually won't even see a difference. For example, for this image, because it's a landscape, there's no people in it. Generally, these content types are not going to have a huge influence on the artwork. So just so that you can see, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the content type from none to graphic and just take a look at the difference that it makes. So slightly less details, a little more flatness in the background. But beyond that, not significantly different in style. What if we change this, get rid of the graphic and add photo? And then we'll do the same thing finally with art. So there you can see the effect that these have on this image. They're rather subtle. So that's just something to consider when you're working with these tags. Now, the next one after content type is we have styles. And again, this allows you to influence the way the generative AI model works. You can also, by the way, type these. So for example, if I went here and typed in digital art and hit generate, what it's going to do is it's going to move that down here and add it to my styles, and you'll see that this is checkmarked here. So you don't actually have to go in here, but this gives you a reference to what are the different styles that the AI will understand in your prompts, and also sometimes is an easier way to explore different options. Some of the styles that I really like are steampunk, and that works well with kind of any image that features a person. The other one I really like is fantasy. Oftentimes that'll give you some really nice results. And you can see here with adding that fantasy, we have, you know, some outgrowth growing on top of the building. It added that. It kind of made this more built into the scenery. So little changes like that are really nice to take a look at. The other one that I really like is if you scroll all the way down to effects and turn on this bioluminescent, that usually gives the artwork some cool lighting effects. Just something that you usually find in digital art that makes it look really cool. And it's something that's pretty easy to add here. You can see now the inside lights are more glowing, kind of shining more light into the scene. All right, and then materials here you can influence. Now I have noticed on something like this, the kind of influence that it has on the scene really is hit or miss. So for example, here, if I turn on layered paper and hit generate, it doesn't actually create an effect that looks like layered paper. It just makes my shadows stronger and kind of gives a weird pattern effect to some of my shading and also some of the background elements. So that's something to consider. All right, next, let's go ahead. I'm going to delete some of these. I'm going to get rid of the art. I'm going to keep digital art, fantasy, and bioluminescent. And then let's start playing with the prompt itself. So this is where you're going to have the largest effect on the image that you're creating. So here, a modern house is obviously creating this very cubic house with a lot of glass. What if we change this to an old house? And then hit generate. Let's see what we get. So immediately a very cool look and very different from the last pieces of art that we were getting. What if we go in here and let's change this from surrounded by mountains to surrounded by alien desert. And you'll notice now that in addition to the background being changed, it has also made some serious changes to the building itself. So this is one thing where you kind of have to get used to the way the AI works. It doesn't think in the same way a human does. If I had just changed this and told you, hey, instead of having it in a mountain setting, put it in a desert setting, you probably wouldn't have changed the entire structure of the building or anything like that. You would have changed the background. So these are the things where the way us humans think and the way the AI thinks is quite different. And you have to kind of think with or learn that and kind of learn the limitation of AI and intentionality. You could almost imagine yourself as being an art director for a really stupid but very talented designer. And you kind of have to learn how you can art direct this designer to get the results that you want. Okay, so let's go ahead here. I'm going to change this back to mountains. I think that was giving me a nicer look. And you'll notice that it went right back to my previous response. It actually didn't regenerate these. Okay, so I'm going to change this to lake, and let's see how much that changes the actual image. Now, in theory, the images that it had already generated were showing a lake. So I'm interested to see what lake as a word changes in the AI's mind. You'll notice that it just seemed to more influence the size of our background more than anything else. So that's something interesting to note. I really like this one. Let's go ahead and make some similar ones to that, see if we get any other cool results. So some interesting results, none of them really that I like better than this. I'm going to go ahead and in my tags, I'm going to add hyper realistic. See if we get better results from that. I'm also going to go to effects and turn off the bioluminescent. Now I can turn it off by either clicking it here, or I can just go ahead and hit the little X here. I'm going to hit generate and see what we get there. And as an image, I really like this one. I really like this. I think either of those would be really cool images. So maybe for this one, we'll finish with this. I really like this, so I'm going to go ahead and download that, and I'm going to say don't show this again and hit OK. Obviously, I'm going to leave the content credentials on there. Okay, so now that we've downloaded this, I'm going to go ahead and open it in Photoshop. And here, really the only thing that I would fix up is I might get rid of this weird thing here, and then get rid of these weirdly shaped birds and maybe add some of my own birds into the sky. Now I could do that relatively quick here with the AI tools in Photoshop, such as the patch tool. So here I'm just going to use the patch tool. We'll select this, kind of scoot that and line that up like that. And then maybe we'll do the same with this weird object. And for this, I'm going to turn on content aware. Nope, that looks, let's try normal instead. Okay, that looks good. And then let's go ahead and get rid of these. All right, and then I might just go to my brushes, go to my Nucly birds here. I just want to have some birds kind of flying in the sky here. So maybe I'll take these, make it smaller, and I want them kind of in the distance. So I'll select a color from about where I want the birds to be. So somewhere about there, and have them flying there like that. I'm actually going to put these on their own layer. And with birds, you kind of have to play with whether they look better dark, or sometimes they look better light. So if I do Command U, turn them white, kind of put them over here, they might look a little better. And I think they were looking better darker. So I'm going to Command Z, and we'll put these right there. Maybe use my lasso tool and just move a couple a little bit, kind of spread them out so they're not all in one little clump there. And there you go. I'm pretty happy with that. And that finishes our first image that we've now created with AI. The next thing I want to show you, and I'm going to go back to Adobe Firefly for this, is how we can create something with a little more intentionality. And in this case, what I want to do is I want to create an image of Little Red Riding Hood in the forest. And I want it to be kind of a cute, almost painterly, somewhat realistic image. So let's go ahead and clear the styles. And here, let's start with Little Red Riding Hood in a foggy forest. And let's hit generate. Okay, so some interesting results. I kind of like this. This looks too out of focus. So this looks kind of cool, but for this image, I want to see her face. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and go Little Red Riding Hood, cute, adorable girl with large blue eyes. Oh. And then we'll just have Foggy Forest, Little Red Riding Hood. Okay, so I'm going to change the prompt to this, and let's see what kind of results we get. Okay, so some interesting results. You'll notice that AI is not great when it comes to human eyes. They look kind of terrifying. Let's try a few other things here. I'm going to add realistic. And I also want to add flying birds in the foreground and background. And let's hit generate. Okay, so a few more interesting results. I kind of like this one. Now we're going to change a few of our settings here. So first, I'm going to change this to photo. And I also want to go under styles. I'm going to go to all there. And I want to turn on fantasy. And then down here, I'm going to turn on hyper realistic. And then down here, we haven't really spoken about these much, but we do have options down here to affect the color, tone, lighting, and composition. And similar to the other styles, what image you're working on is going to affect how much these influence your final image. But in this case, I want to go to muted colors. I want to change this to backlighting. And then under composition, I want to go narrow depth of field. So let's go ahead, generate this one more time. Let's see what kind of results we get. So starting to get more close to what I want. I kind of like this one. So let's try to iterate on this. Still not great. Let's try. And so this is where it becomes a little bit of a challenge, because I don't know what to tell the AI to get closer to the result I want. I kind of like this, so maybe I'll say adorable girl with big blue eyes instead. See if that changes anything. Maybe I'll change this to misty forest. See if that changes anything. So I basically want the same prompt. I just want more results. And I've noticed that if you keep hitting the refresh and just generate more, it'll eventually arrive at about 3 and it'll just keep feeding you those same ones. So again, these two on the left are closer to what I want. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to just reject these in the hopes that when I refresh, it won't give me ones that are too similar to those. Okay, so I kind of like these. So maybe I'll try using this as a starting point. So here we have 2 random detached wings on her head. Otherwise, this one's actually quite nice. So let's see if we can get similar results to that, but hopefully without the random wings on her head. I'm going to add blonde girl, just because I want the girl to be blonde. I'm going to add beautiful and nostalgic, see if that pushes it more toward what I want. I'm also going to add under here, I'm going to change it from photo to art. The other thing I want to try is just changing this to normal landscape. That'll sometimes give you different results, meaning it'll always give you different results, but sometimes it'll get you closer to where you want to be. Here I'm just changing my prompt back to a little bit more similar to what I had before. Just kind of liking those results. See, this is close to what I want. The problem is I want the face to look more real. So generally, if you want face to look more real, you can go to photo, but then you do start to get the kind of strange, just a photo face pasted onto the artwork. So it's one of these where you have to kind of toe the line, test different things. And I'm fast forwarding through a lot of the generating part. So this is actually taking much longer than it's showing here in the tutorial. But essentially, I'm just generating over and over, hoping to get the AI a little closer to what I want. And I can give it some feedback by saying things I don't like and things I do like to try to kind of influence it. But honestly, I don't know how immediate the beta feedback is to the AI building engine. All right, so now that I have an image I'm happy with from Firefly, I'm going to go ahead and open it in Photoshop. Now I have included it here in the tutorial assets so that you can just start from the same image I'm starting from. So here's the image. I think it's quite cute. The only thing that I don't like is obviously her eyes need to be fixed, and these birds just don't look very good. So let's go ahead and make a copy. and we'll leave the original intact. The first thing I want to do is get rid of these birds, so let's do that with our patch tool. Actually, for this, I'll just use the content aware fill. So I'm going to go ahead and select this first bird and then go to edit, content aware fill. And there you can see it's done a good job. So we'll just hit OK. And then I want to do the same thing with this bird here. Make sure I'm on the right layer. That looks good. Let's hit OK. Now this one, you can see there's still a bit of a bird shape in there. So I'm just going to take this this layer, make a copy of it, and then add a Gaussian blur to it. That'll smooth out those lines, like so. Okay, so I'm now ready to put in the new birds. So if I go to File, Place Embedded, inside my assets, you're going to see two birds. I'm going to take the bird 01, go ahead and place that one first. And I want this bird to parallel the colors that she has. So I like this blue and this red. I want this bird to have similar colors. Also, the bird needs to be a little more painted looking so that it matches up with the rest of our image. So to do the paint, I'm just going to go to Stylize, Oil Paint, and I'm going to turn off the lighting, turn on the preview, and we can just adjust the cleanliness and stylization here. Don't want to overdo it, so maybe around 2.3, hit OK. And then on this mask, I want to go in here and just where the eye is with a brush on this mask. I'm going to paint out the eye because I want that nice and in focus, and same with these, the beak here and the feet. So that looks good. The other thing I may want to do here is, because of this strong backlighting on her, there would be a similar strong light on this bird. So I might just add kind of over where the head is here, a strong highlight on this bird. So we'll just do that. I'm just going to do that with a curve layer. So with this part selected, just add a curve layer. And I'm going to clip this so it's only applying to the bird, like so. And that looks good. And then we'll add the other bird here in the foreground, kind of out of focus. So let's do File, Place Embedded. Oh, actually, before I do that, I do want to adjust these colors. So I'm just going to do Command U, or go up to Image Adjustments, Hue Saturation. It's Command U. And here I want to select this, which will allow me to target a specific color. I want to select this kind of orange color in there. Once it's selected, you'll see this has been added down here. And I can push this a little more toward red. And then I'm going to do this again, but this time for the blue colors here. And with those blue colors selected, we'll push them a little bit more towards cyan, like this color here, and then maybe take down the saturation just a little bit as well. Again, I'm trying to match it to this color. And I think that looks good. We'll hit OK. And then I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, and in here I want to grab the second bird. And this one we're going to move it so that it's on its own layer over here. Now this one, the colors are kind of already adjusted a bit, so I think we can just place it about there, and then I want to make this out of focus, so we'll just add a Gaussian blur on it. So something like this, and then maybe add a little more contrast to it with a curve. So something like this. And then the next thing I want to do is clean up her eyes. So I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off this pixel grid just because it makes it hard to see when you're zoomed in. Okay, so first there's this blue that's on her skin here. Let's go ahead and get rid of that first. So I'm going to go right above her. We're going to call this skin cleanup. I'm also going to take all these layers that make up the birds. We'll just put them in a layer called birds. Okay, and then on the skin cleanup, I'm going to change the blending mode to color so that this layer only affects color. And then with my brush tool, I can select the surrounding skin color here and then just paint over this area of the skin that should not be blue here. So like that. And we can do the same on this side as well. Just all this where the blue of the eye is bleeding out. We'll do that. Okay, then I need to replace our actual eye. If we go to File, Open, I have this Alexander Gray file from Unsplash. What I want to do is I just want to kind of steal this eye. Now, this eye was taken in a very high key situation, so the pupil is kind of tiny. Whereas if we look at this, she's in kind of a dark forest, so her pupils would not be that bright. So we're going to have to factor that in. And I might just fix that first. So to fix that, what I'm going to do is take my elliptical marquee, kind of select right in the middle of the iris here, out to about where the catch light there ends. And then I'm going to just do Q for quick mask, go to filter Gaussian blur. And with this, all I'm doing is feathering this selection edge a tiny bit. And then I'll do Command J. That'll put the pupil on its own layer. I can do Command T for transform. Hold down Option so that it scales from the middle. And then just scale this up to about there. That looks good. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and with my pen tool, make a selection around this eye. Make selection. And I'm going to merge these two with Command E, and then I'll do Command J, and we'll call this new eye. And I'm going to right mouse click, convert this to a smart object, and then throw it into my scene here. And put the opacity on 50% by just hitting 5 on the keyboard. And then I'm going to zoom in here, line up the irises, and try to make this the approximate size of the previous eye. So something like this. And then in here, we need to create a mask. So I'm going to do that. Again, I'm going to go P for my pen tool, just draw a mask around where this eye is. So we'll make a selection. I'm going to do 0.05, just add a little bit of anti-aliasing, and then add the mask to our eye, and then we can take the opacity back to 100. You can see as far as an eye go, that looks much better, but it looks like it's bulging out of her eye because there's no shadows. So here we'll add a eyeshadow, and this I'm going to clip to my eye layer by just doing that. And then I'm going to go B for brush and select just this darker color here. And then with a really big soft brush, just kind of start brushing a little bit of that shadow onto the eye there on the left, and then a little more along the top here like this. This I'm actually going to go even darker, almost black. And that looks more natural. And here we can also add another layer that'll just darken around the eye. So for this, I'm going to put it on overlay, default my colors with D to black and white, and then with the black, just paint along the top of the eye so that most of the color is happening at the bottom. And take the opacity down on that just a little, so to about 80%. So I'm happy with that eye. Next, we're going to do this eye. So what I'm going to do here is take all these layers and hold down Option, make a copy of them, and then move this to the other eye. And we'll just line it up about there. And then I do need to adjust it a tiny bit. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this mask. And then we'll go ahead and temporarily turn it off. And with our pen tool, we'll draw a new mask for this eye. And then maybe move the shadow actually, I'm going to delete this shadow and do the shadow Nucly for this eye. And again, I want to make sure it's clipped. And also because this eye is just a tiny bit closer to us, I'm actually going to take it and do a transform and make it just a tiny bit bigger, like that. Just a touch. Okay. And then the other thing I think would also kind of add to the charm of this is adding some eyelashes, some stronger eyelashes to her, maybe a little bit more of some highlights on her lips and maybe some freckles. So for the eyeliner, I'm going to do that with a brush. So I'm going to go B for my brush tool, and I'm going to go import brushes, and inside the assets for the tutorial, you're going to see the sample brushes. Go ahead and load those. And then if we scroll down to those brushes, you're going to see we have a top eyelash. So here, I'm just going to select the brush, make sure I have black as my color, kind of line this up with our character here. So something like this. And then we'll do the other side. Now to flip my brush, if we go to our brush presets here, under brush tip, we can flip X and flip Y. In this case, I want to flip X. And now you can see that it's shaped to that eye. I do need to tip it a bit. So if I right mouse click, I can change the angle a little bit like this, and then also maybe make it just a little bit smaller. There you go. All right, and then we'll do the bottom eyelid as well, or bottom eyelashes. There's another brush here for that. And then we'll also do the other eye. Again, I'm going to have to go to the brush tip, flip X, and then we'll adjust our angle just a little bit, like so. So a little bit, but it just does add to a little bit of that charm, that kind of storybook look. And then we're going to add a layer for freckles. And here again, if I go to my brushes, I have this freckle brush, and I'm going to make that a bit smaller, kind of select her darker skin color here, so maybe this, and then just hit a few times with the freckle brush. And on the freckles, I'm going to put these on multiply, and then I'm going to do Command U to bring up my hue saturation. I want to colorize these, pump up the saturation, just make them a little bit lighter. So about there, I think that probably saturation is a little too much. So something around there, hit OK. And then I also want to double click, and under the blending options, I don't want the highlights to have such strong freckles. So I'm going to go to underlying layer, hold down option, split this, and just drag this to the left until the highlights start to come on top of the freckles there, and then hit OK. So pretty subtle. And then finally, the last one is the lips. So we'll just call this lip highlight. And here, I'm just going to go to my brushes, maybe go to the dry brushes. Select this one here. I'm going to make it very small, kind of select the highlight color there, and just add some highlights to the lip there. And then I think we can also add some eye catch lights. So we'll do eye catch lights. And here I just want to add a little bit more of the catch light to her eye. So we'll select this color there. Maybe add a little bit there like this. And then we'll do a similar thing here. I've found that for kind of like cute, adorable pictures, you want more catch light in the eye. It just makes for a cuter look. So there you go. That looks pretty good to me. The only thing I might want to change is make her hair a little bit blonder. So for that, I'll just make a selection here of her hair. And here I'm going to add a curve. And in my curve, I'm going to go to the reds, bring that up just a tiny bit, and in the blues, bring it down just a bit. That'll add a little more gold to her hair there. So pretty subtle, but just kind of takes her hair out of that gray kind of color that it was having. And we might want to also just, with a brush on our mask, add with, I'm going to take my opacity down and just lightly brush over this hair here so we get some of that color transfer onto this hair as well. So there you go. I'm pretty happy with that. The final thing I might just do is add a vignette at the very top. To do that, I'm going to take my elliptical marquee, kind of select out the center like this, and then add a curve, make it a little bit darker, and then go to my mask here. And if we open this up, you'll see the invert button. Then I can add feather. And then here, I can adjust how much I want my vignette. So maybe like this. And then finally, we can even add a little bit more of a color grade. So I'm going to do that also with a curve. But this, I'm just going to go to the blue, kind of pick up the bottom. That's going to add a little bit of our blue into our shadows. Take down the top. That's going to give it a little bit more yellow in our highlights. And then finally, for the green, I just want to add a little bit more green in the highlights, give it a little bit of a magical, mystical look. So there you can see that is the direct output from Firefly, and this is our fixed up final image. So there you have it. That's an introduction to Adobe Firefly's text-to-image generator, and also how you can incorporate AI imagery into your Photoshop workflow. Now, right now, we are very limited. You can't use these images for any commercial purposes, but I do suggest that you start learning how to interact with the AI image generators, how to get the most out of them, because I think in the future, you're going to see more and more of these tools incorporated into Photoshop. and become more prevalent. So let's start learning them now. And if you want to accelerate your learning in Photoshop or your creative learning, check out Nucly.com. I've got a lot of courses, tools, and assets there that you can purchase. Otherwise, here's some more tutorials that you can check out, and I'll see you next time.